We have a fantastic panel and a very varied panel today. And because we're so lucky to have a huge range of experience on the panel, we want to try and make it as interactive as possible. So if anyone has any questions as early as possible, just put up your hands. I think there's a roving mic somewhere. I'm not sure where it is exactly, but somewhere there's a mic. So we're happy to take questions. We're going to start with introductions from all the panelists, and then we'll get into the debate. So if we start at this side, we have a real-life artist.
Hi. Is this working? Yes, I'm real life. I'm Ellie Lawson, a singer-songwriter with my own label called Marie-Alicia. I was signed with a major label in America in about 2005, Atlantic Records. They were going through a merger at the time, so it didn't quite work out for me, but I ended up putting my debut album out with Barnes & Noble bookshops. They bought 25,000 copies, and I did a tour of their bookshops in America. Since that time, I've been very proactive as an independent artist. I also got sponsored by Quicksilver, who I've been with for 4 years, and they've helped me with my artwork and also videos and photos and things like that. Also, I'm an electronic dance music artist as well from the last 2 years. I've just put out my debut album last week. And I've got a database of over 100 songs which I use in shops around the world, and which is one of my big incomes.
Next we have Marie-Alicia from the startup world that Ben was talking about earlier.
Hi, I'm a co-founder of Musicmetric. So we're a UK tech startup, 4 years old now. I don't know if any of you saw the recent coverage of the Digital Music Index, which was on the BBC. So that was our report covering social media trends and the illegal download trends in the last year. And our product serves probably a great many of you here in the audience. It's our dashboard, so we track social media, we track the illegal downloads, we track social mentions and text mentions and sentiment on the web, and put it together into a dashboard. It means people can track the progress of their artists, and bookers use it to look at the spread of popularity of different bands across the world for booking festivals and things like that. So that's Musicmetric.
I'm John Mansfield. I've been in the music industry for over 22 years. I was the MD of music at EMAP, now Bauer, working across brands like Q, Kerrang, Mojo, Kiss, Smash Hits, Mixmag, stuff like that, running all their events and setting up a successful record label. Then moved on to the BBC. I was head of music content for BBC Worldwide, working on things like Glastonbury, Radio 1 Big Weekend, the Electric Proms, later Top of the Pops, etc., etc. And then at the end of 2010, I left to set up MusicConnex. We did our first pilot event in 2011, which was a music and digital conference for 1,100 people, 140 speakers from all around the world, many of which are on this panel now, and lots of the major digital platforms, including Facebook, Reverb Nation, SoundCloud, Spotify, We7, Believe Digital, etc., etc., etc. And I'm chairing today. So over to Simon from Beggars XL, one of the biggest British independents.
Hi, my name's Simon Wheeler. I'm the Director of Digital at the Beggars group of labels. My role is mainly, largely business development, so I'm the person that licenses our catalogue to digital music services, and also managing the strategy and direction of Beggars group in terms of new technologies.
Next we have Gregory from another startup, Decibel.
Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Gregory. I'm from a company called Decibel. Like Ben, I was a 90s dot-commer. And if you don't know Decibel already, we do what's called music metadata, which is, well, in the analog age, you would have called it product information. And it's used by all 4 of the major record labels and most of the digital service providers. There's around 300, 350 companies that use what we do, and they use our raw material to create awesome products.
Finally, Martin, who has set up a music platform for you to consume music.
Yes, thanks, John. I'm co-founder of Psonar. Psonar has got a very, very simple mission, which is to make on-demand streaming music available to people aged 12 to 25 who can't afford subscription streaming and want to be able to pay per play. And so we charge people typically a penny, a cent, or a Eurocent to play one track once. We've got a limited beta, which is live in the UK, an iOS app. We've got an HTML5 web app, so please do have a go with the service. And we've just done our first major label licensing agreement with Universal. And listening to Ben telling his story about the time and the pain. I mean, you know, I'm 5 years younger than he is, and look at me.
What I thought we'd do, just to, a bit like Ben, I guess, just to contextualise it a little bit, is starting off with Simon. In recent history, one of the biggest artists in the world is Adele, and they're signed to an independent, albeit a very big independent, but nevertheless an independent. And many years ago, when the digital revolution started, that was completely unthinkable that an independent label could ever have something like that. And clearly, although there's lots of traditional platforms that have helped with that, the digital revolution has clearly played a part. So, Simon, do you want to kick off and comment on that?
Well, there's no doubt that the shift to digital, when it started happening a very long time ago, has fundamentally changed our business. We have always thought that our artists were creating music which was good enough. If we could get it in front of people, then a lot of people would be interested. But it was always the access to market, which traditionally has been very hard. I mean, now the access to market is very easy. Everyone can do it, whether you're an individual, whether you're a company. So in some ways you could look at that and say that it's leveled the playing field, but actually what you have got now, because everyone can do it, you've actually got to be heard above all the noise. So while it's easier to get access, it's much harder to get people's attention than it ever was. And it's trying to stand out above the noise. And I think for a company the size of Beggars, we seem to be fairly well suited to the digital world. I think as Ben mentioned earlier on, you know, you don't have to be the largest, but being agile, being nimble, being able to adjust to your surroundings and the changes is what all small companies should be very mindful of, really, because if you can't be agile, that is your advantage over the big companies. Radio, I think, for most music companies was, and particularly outside the UK and particularly in the US, was always incredibly hard to get access to. It was very protective. You know, maybe it was to do with the payola, which you'd like to think was being eradicated now, but if you didn't get access to radio, then you weren't going to sell any music. Nowadays, we don't really have any access to radio still in the United States, but that isn't the way that we reach our customers, and it's not the way that the people who are interested in the type of music which our artists create. It's not how they discover music nowadays. You know, the internet has absolutely given us a channel to reach customers directly. But really what we found is much more powerful is how we can interact with tastemaker brands, people like Pitchfork, for instance. You know, Pitchfork has totally changed the way that music gets discovered in America. You can't say about many people that if you get a good review somewhere, you will sell records. But if you get a good review on Pitchfork, you will really sell records. You can be the most unheard thing artist ever, and you will sell records if you get a good review on Pitchfork. That's how influential they are. So things like that, which didn't exist, you know, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, really, some of it, you know, these are the opportunities which I think we've taken and we've identified, and I think they're the opportunities which anyone can access, and that is the biggest change that's happened to our business. And it's turned us from being a company of being about 40, 50 people, I think, many years ago when I started, into a company which is now 150 people, operate around the world, and we license digital services directly around the world. And that's something which was unthinkable 10 or 15 years ago.
Brilliant, and I think that's a nice segue into Ellie. Ellie's an artist, DIY artist. She's been signed to a major label. She now promotes herself. And the way an artist has to approach their career is very different now to how it was many years ago. Because effectively, Ellie's a startup. She's had to do business plans. She has a deal with Quicksilver as a sponsor direct. So talk to me about being an artist in this new age.
Well, it's very exciting. There's lots of opportunities, but obviously I invest every penny that I make. I invest back into my business, and that's how it's been really for the last 10 years. I mean, that's what you have to do. But the idea is to, be as creative as possible, keep putting music out there. I put 3 albums out, 2 EPs. But then to get to the next level, really, just to make yourself look as attractive as possible, by investing in the photos and the music, the videos, the photos, just the whole package. And, of course, actually paying producers as well to record the music. It's actually difficult, but, you're going for a goal of actually to attract an investor or to attract a record label. Having already been at the record label and got to a certain point, I can see how it all works. You've got to have the coordinated plan, you've got to have the team that know exactly what they're doing, which obviously costs money, they need to get paid. And you need to create momentum and then keep that momentum going. So I can see how it all works, and it's just a case of, for me, I believe, just keep doing it, and then you'll get to a point where you've got a product, and then it can happen really quickly when it does happen. So it's just kind of getting it all together.
Ellie,
and at the same time, obviously, still being able to live and eat.
Well, yeah, I think we all face that challenge every day in a startup. If you don't mind, I just do a quick question. I have lots of 10 and 12-year-old nephews and nieces. And when they discover new music, the first thing they do when they hear One Direction has a new track out, apart from absolutely going balmy, is they go check it out on YouTube. To what extent does video play a part for music discovery or for you getting your tunes out there?
You've just made a new video, haven't you, actually?
Yeah, I actually started using a website called Radar, which is fantastic for musicians that have a small budget that want to make really good, well-made videos. And so the last couple of videos I've used that. But the actual YouTube views, some artists make it sound like, just put a video on YouTube and all of a sudden you've got millions of hits, and that's not the case at all. It's really difficult to kind of get people to see it. And one of the things I've been doing is I've got 4 Facebook profiles. I'm trying to be proactive as an artist. It's quite difficult without actually paying Facebook, but I've got these profiles where I go to add people from pages of music that are similar to me, and I add those people onto my profile, and then I put an event out there. It's actually quite a lot of work. Put an event and then let everybody know that the video is available. Otherwise, it's very difficult without hiring a PR company to actually let people know that it's there. Obviously, ideally, you want it to be a viral video and it's going to go wild, but I mean, that doesn't happen for a lot of people all the time.
So, moving on now to Marie-Alicia. In the analogue world, something like your business wouldn't have existed. So there's now fantastic opportunities to do new and exciting things in the music environment. So talk about sort of the background to your startup and how that all came about and how it's going.
I think that, we, as sort of a group of founders, we all had a real passion about music, and we were all sort of interested in different areas of it, which is one of the things that I thought was interesting about what Ben said, is that, it's quite often good when you've got a mix of characters and a mix of skills. We're all very different, and our approach to, the sort of pain points, if you like, in the music industry are quite different. And so that kind of helped, I think, to build a sort of foundation of where, we're all thinking about and trying to problem solve in different ways. And one of the things that Matt, our co-founder, did was, a lot of tracking of the BitTorrent network, and he'd sort of, being a bit of a tech head, had really identified that this was somewhere, especially in student kind of communities, that people were kind of going online and sharing a lot of files. There was a lot of activity happening there, where you could start to look at trends and, what was sort of picking up around the country, or in fact around the globe, because it's actually a global network. And then sort of myself was interested in kind of looking at the different ways and different styles people had, and the varying degree of success people had in trying to promote themselves on social media, and just how much that was changing the way people were communicating. I mean, social media lends itself so beautifully to music, because I think when people want to communicate something, music is a very rich experience, and it's generally experiences people want to share and reach out and talk to or discover about. And, social media has allowed people to discover music through friends, it's always happened that way, but you've just now got such a larger network. You're sort of reaching outside of your physical network of people that you know and see day to day into this huge other kind of global environment. And I think, as was just said here, you know, by Simon, it's rising above the noise is very difficult. So one of the reasons that we wanted to track this sort of spread, if you like, of what's happening online and which artists are getting picked up where is to help those artists identify their pockets of fans. Because, you know, when you're going online like an artist like Ellie and you're just posting stuff out there, it can be quite difficult to know, you know, what's actually happening when I put that up there, who's actually reaching out and sort of taking this, and where does it go around the web and around the world, and, you know, how do I find more of those people that are interested in it? So I don't think that tools like ours are a silver bullet. You know, they don't, you know, it's not like you're going to use it and instantly become successful. You know, I think any artist today, as Ellie's explained, needs to invest in people who really understand what they're doing, because now more than ever, you don't want any sort of, you know, bulk in your team, if you like. You need people that really are very specific and know how to do whatever their, you know, particular role might be. But a lot of those people will be most useful to you if they understand how to use these new tools successfully. And, you know, Musicmetric is just one of those tools. Another, you know, from our digital music index, one thing that came out really clearly was about SoundCloud. You know, those artists who'd had the most plays on SoundCloud in the previous year had the most plays across social networks, so across all different social networks the following year. So what that means is that SoundCloud is a really great way to get your tracks up, because people tend to share that in all sorts of places where you'll then meet new people. You know, it'll find new pockets of fans, and those people then, if you're smart and you know you link directly, and this is something that, you know, you probably are well aware of, is making sure that you always drive people back to that main bit of content or that main landing page you want them to be at. You know, then you've suddenly you know, driven a huge kind of marketing. You know, I mean, nothing can be preemptively viral. You know, you can't say if I put this out, I do this, it's going to become viral. But, you know, there are certain places where you can start to target people that are a bit more influential. You know, and there are a lot of Uber users of those sorts of platforms that, you know, do help. You know, if you know, okay, this sort of network is interested, or these sorts of people, you know, blogs are interested in these kind of music and these kind of artists, as you said, looking at your similar artists, that's a great way to reach new fans as well. But I do think that, you know, there's, just like with any emerging, I mean, digital is still such an emerging area, and people are still working on things like, how do you get the revenue streams right? You know, we see huge amounts of plays on YouTube. It's one of the things that came out of the Digital Music Index again. It was, you know, people talk about, wow, the numbers of illegal downloads that are happening, but the numbers of plays that are happening on YouTube are huge. And, you know, that's a great thing for a lot of artists, but there's also a lot of artists that are worrying about how to monetize, you know, that. And it's not always that easy, you know, to navigate that and to really understand how to do that in the most effective way, where you as an artist are actually getting something back. So I think it's early days. You know, there's a lot of people out there, our companies, Decibel, lots of different people all trying to pull together to use the data that we have to create tools that make life easier for artists. But I don't think there's, you know, necessarily a...
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the interesting things about Musicmetrics, and we'll come on to Decibel in a second, is that data has now become an increasingly valuable tool, more than ever before, and there are obviously businesses creating from that value. So on to Decibel now. Gregory, if you want to talk a bit about your business and how you've built a business using metadata effectively.
Yeah, well, it wasn't the most deeply fashionable thing about 4 years ago when we came into the industry. We started out doing metadata for the intelligence gathering industry, actually for the New York District Attorney. You've spent some time with Evan, our founder. Absolute genius. If you've ever seen CSI New York or Miami, and you see the guys behind the database, and the policeman comes up to them and says, you know, show me everybody in a 4-mile radius who drives a blue Ford Pinto, who wears blue shoes and has gone to this bar. And they type all this down into the computer, and it comes up, you know, with the face and a fingerprint of a man, Hollywood style. Those are the systems that actually we created Decibel on. Those are the ones that our founder Evan actually created in real life. He's not quite as glamorous as the girls behind the databases and the TV shows, but he's getting there. He also had hair when he started back in that company. He lost it when he started working for Standard & Poor's, doing exactly the same for the finance industry. So we repurpose these technologies for the music industry. And it's all about creating intelligence from data. It's about putting data together and finding out information that you didn't previously know. It's about putting data together and using it to create connected TV applications, or mobile applications, etc. What interests me, and actually what we did our first year coming into the music industry, was we met with people like Simon, actually, and all the major record labels, and said, we have this really cool core technology. We think it would be awesome for music, but we don't really know what to do with it. What should we do? And some people knew what we were talking about, some didn't, and all of them were very useful in guiding us in terms of what we needed to do. That would be my recommendation for anybody starting a company in this sector, is actually before you start building stuff, find out whether people actually want it. That was incredibly key for us, and it really helped us formulate our plans for how to develop not just the core technology, but develop everything else to do with the business, the way we deliver it, the way we handle it, what sort of information people find important, what they don't. It was incredibly vital for us. And as a result, when they actually built the core technology, we had a group of companies that already had a vested interest in our success, because they'd already told us what they wanted, and they required it. So right then, it was very easy for us to hit the ground running and speak to the record labels and speak to the digital service providers and say, look, a year ago you told us what you wanted, we've built it, now you've got no excuse, you've got to buy it. And that was really how we launched commercially.
And I think I'd second that, just in saying that it's really important to kind of listen to what people want more than even trying to figure out, what you think the future's going to be, because it changes so quickly. And I think, especially in the music industry, people have very specific needs. So, yeah, I'd just say that's a really good point.
The next thing to move on is Martin and Psonar. One of the big changes that's been happening rapidly, and if you speak to any of the major distributors, like, for example, Believe Digital, there's been a massive shift over the last few years from people downloading music to accessing music through streaming services such as Psonar. Obviously now, with people having more and more access to capacity through the cloud, what is the need anymore to own? It's not like the old days when you had vinyl and CDs where there's a tactile experience with ownership. In the digital world, there isn't really that experience, so therefore, is there any need for ownership anymore? Is it now just about access? I was doing a talk early this week, which is surrounding the launch by, as Ben mentioned, Samsung. Samsung smart TVs, which now have full connectivity, have apps. You can access music on your TV, you can access music on your mobile, you can access music on your PC. So, Martin, talk to us about sort of the consumer experience and access to music.
Well, I think it picks up directly on what Maria and Greg have been saying about data, which is that what we've all got to be in the business of doing is understanding the way that people want to pay with music. Now, obviously, that brings up the great bogeyman of piracy, and people say, well, they want to be able to pirate music. And the answer is, actually, I don't think people do want that. What people want to do is do something human with music, which is, as Maria talked about, sharing and being social. And they want convenience, and they want affordability. And obviously, because we live in this age of technology, they've got the means to be able to do that with the internet. The internet enables a sort of democratization of the engagement between the consumer and the service provider. So I think that really understanding the way the market is going and the way that people are behaving is a prerequisite of being successful in running a technology-based music service. And to some extent that answers your question, John, which is that I think there's going to be a place in the market for download as well as for streaming. For example, in our case, we see that many of the consumers that we engage with want to move from streaming on demand, paying per play, to downloading to own, because you can do things with a download that you can't do with a streamed music service. So I think that there is a broad gamut of possibilities going forward. I think that understanding the data and analysing it and following the way in which your users are using your service is absolutely critical to being successful, and not letting any gaps remain in the market. And if I can finish off by just saying that the BPI have been doing some good work with their innovation panel at looking at the way in which users do want to engage with music and trying to make sure that there is a service offering to fill every gap. because, as an industry, we can't bash other people over the head, such as Google for search results, or in the old days, less so now for YouTube, if we're not offering a reasonable range of services which are reasonably affordable, reasonably convenient, which match with the way in which people want to engage with and enjoy music. And I think that's beginning to come right. I mean, there is a really rich range of music services out there which cater for all tastes, all behaviours, all demographics.
One other question I was going to ask you, Martin, is given that you're a startup in the space that has to get access to catalogue from record labels, what are the challenges that any startups in your space may face?
That is a perfect question. I was lucky to go to the Great Escape and talk when Francis Keeling was there a few years back, and Francis is the worldwide head of digital for Universal. And Francis said two things to me. He said, "You can't do that without a license," because at the time we had a locker service. In fact, I told Simon about our locker service in those days as well.
Yeah, I think I told you the same thing.
You told me the same thing, exactly. But the second thing that Francis said was, it's really frustrating that nobody's come up with a worthwhile monetization model for music based on micropayments, which is a long way of saying, why can't you pay to stream music using your mobile phone? Because obviously, in the younger demographic, they haven't got access to credit cards or bank accounts or whatever. But it's now nearly 3 years since I had that conversation with Francis, and Universal have had shown great goodwill towards us all the way through. But it is sclerotic, the speed at which decision-making occurs in any big company, and music companies are no exception to that. And obviously they're under pressure to make sure that they do things as cost-effectively as possible, therefore their manning is reduced all the time, and therefore engagement with major labels is a challenge. But that said, as I say, we have had enormous goodwill from the people we've engaged with. It just does take a long time.
So moving on neatly then to a label with Simon. I guess one of the challenges that you face is that obviously you've been a big supporter of digital platforms for a long time, but because the opportunity is now to create lots and lots of digital platforms, people are creating lots of digital platforms as it's democratised pretty much every part of our life. But that's a challenge because you can't. There's just you really, isn't there, and a lawyer. So how's that for you?
Well, it's a challenge. As much as we may be a larger independent, we're still an independent and a small, medium-sized company. And we don't have unlimited resources. There is just me doing business development, and there's one lawyer who does all our artist contracts, he does our buildings contracts, he does our digital contracts, and anything else that gets contracted. So, between the two of us, we have to cover an awful lot of ground, and there's only so many hours in the day, and we try and work most of them. But at the end of the day, we can't get through everything. We can't get everyone that comes to our door and says we'd like a license. Even if we think the terms are right, we just can't get through everyone. It's just not possible. So, we have to prioritise, and we have to prioritise, what's going to get us the biggest bang for our buck and what's going to get us the biggest return for our artists. And that's how we have to prioritise. And sometimes it's a bit unfair, but it's just the way of the world. I don't know any other way of doing it, to be quite honest. We'd love to license everyone that we could agree terms with, but sometimes you just got to wait in the queue, and there's things going on. Obviously, at the moment, we've got a lot of really big companies making plays into the music world, and that's important for us. We want to be as democratic as possible to license people, but at the end of the day, if Google's going to bring its music product to 500 million Android users around the world, I've kind of got to focus on that. It's important. And other stuff might not get done while I'm focusing on that, but that's just the way things are. It's just being realistic.
Sticking with you, Simon, and moving forward into the future now, and looking forward to how things might develop. We talked a little bit earlier about the sort of the debate versus ownership and streaming and how that's changing. And obviously, in your role, you've seen a lot of change over the last, 8 to 10 years as the digital revolution has taken hold. How do you see things moving in the future with, mobiles becoming increasingly important, et cetera, et cetera? How do you see things developing?
Well, it's going to develop quickly. That is the one thing that we do know. It's going to change, and it's going to continue to change fast. Actually, how it's going to change, we've got a few guesses from what we can see at the moment. 8 out of 10 of our top earning partners, our top financial digital partners globally, are either subscription-based or access-based or streaming-based services. Now that's pretty incredible. You know, a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, I don't think we would have seen that kind of a shift. There's only 2 a la carte download services in our top 10 partners. Now, they're kind of quite big services, but it just shows that the shift is happening quite rapidly. And
even one of those big download services, iTunes, has been rumoured for a long time to be venturing into the streaming space.
well, that's what you're reading, yeah. I mean, you know, we'll see when it happens. I don't think downloading is going to go away. That's for sure. You know, as much as vinyl hasn't disappeared, I don't think permanent downloads are going to disappear. You know, I think, as you said, there's things you can do with a permanent download still at the moment, which you can't with streaming. And I think certainly in car, which is a lot of people are looking at that as being one of the next developments. At the moment, if you really want a great music service in your car, you know, you can get stuff, but really the best experience is a permanent download experience. So that's something which I think still needs to progress. And I think one of the opportunities, which amazingly we don't think has been solved yet, is music discovery. Now I've got an iPad full of apps which are all about music discovery, and you know what? I don't use any of them. So I mean, I think there's a real opportunity there if someone can sort of bring all this together. There's some interesting work which Gregory's doing with, you know, around the richer metadata to try and help that, but we're still feeling that there's a lot of work to be done then to bring it into the mass market and really make that an interesting opportunity.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, Ellie was talking about the perspective earlier as an artist, and it's very difficult to get cut through, but also as a consumer, there's so much music out there. How do you find what you're looking for? How do you find new stuff? And it's very, very difficult to get cut through. I guess what I'd like to ask all the panellists now, and as I mentioned before, if anyone wants any questions, please do put up your hand and we'll get a mic to you to ask questions. What I'd like to ask each of the panellists is, looking forward to the future, what they see the greatest opportunities and the greatest threats moving forward. I mean, Simon was talking about cars is the next sort of area that hasn't really been tapped, but inevitably as we get access to the internet in all parts of our life, and with 4G moving forward, there's no reason why in the future, and lots of cars are already developing these sort of systems, that you can access the internet in your car stereo and therefore have access to a lot more services. So yeah, Ellie, starting with you, what do you think are the biggest opportunities and the biggest threats in the future?
Oh, blimey. Well, I mean, opportunities, if you get everything right, you get the plan right and the team right, then obviously you can do an Adele and, you know, sell to a lot of people very quickly, which is what every artist wants to do, really. You just want to reach out to as many people as possible who want to hear your music. With streaming, I find it quite scary, really, because the artist gets paid so little, and, you know, the CD is such a great thing for a musician. I mean, when I did my last tour, I was selling CDs for £10, and you can make a big profit on that. And obviously Apple now, next year, getting rid of CD drives from the Macs, so it's going to be, you know, become extinct. Probably. So it's going to be very difficult to make money from the streaming. And also, I think you kind of lose control a little bit as well. I mean, I feel like with Facebook, how they suddenly changed their terms. Now they're charging us to reach our fan base. You know, we didn't know about that before. It's like everything's offered for free at first, and then you end up having to pay quite a bit. So I sort of worry a little bit in that way. I worry for musicians having to pay all their money to reach fans that they could reach without paying all that money. So that sounds really gloomy.
I guess things have moved back now to, I mean, for a long time people were saying you need to have your own website, and then they said no, focus on Facebook, that's where you need to be because that's where everyone else is. And now people are saying move back to having your own website because Facebook are starting to monetize that communication. So.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you want to do everything from your website, but it's just how to get people to your website. You know, everyone wants to be in a certain, they want to be in Facebook land, or they want to be in Spotify land. So it's just working out. I mean, ideally I imagine having my website with a database of all my songs on there, and it just working in a way that people will want to be there. I mean, I think that's the ideal way forward. So I can keep dreaming about that one.
Marie-Alicia, what's, from your perspective, what are the big opportunities for you and the big threats?
I I think the big opportunities in music are the new services and the new tools. The fact that it's such a big melting pot of all these different things. You've got mobile, you've got the streaming, you've got the social networks. But I think the biggest threat actually to the industry as a whole is that you do have mobile and you've got social networks and people talk about there being too many kind of mouths to feed on the chain between the artist to the record label in the old days. And I think there's a danger that that's going to become something that's kind of happening again, where you've got all these different tools and all these different places where an artist has to be. And that seems great to the consumer, but sometimes that can be difficult for the artist if those different things can't work together, to bring quite a consolidated or a sort of rational way for the artist to actually prosper from that. And I think that one of the difficult things is that a lot of the people that are bringing out these new technologies and that are building great services, it feels a little bit like they're very, they want to be kind of kings of, the way that they do something. And I think that is great in one way, but I think there's going to need to be a lot more negotiation between some of these big partners so that people can find a more, I don't know what the solution is, but people can find a better route, I guess, to servicing the needs of not just the consumer, but also the great creatives and the artists that have to, the teams, because it is just, it is more than just the artists. There's whole teams there that also need to be viable and profitable in order for the music industry to stay alive.
Gregory, what do you think? The greatest opportunities that will be heading our way due to technology and the greatest threats?
I think if you'd asked me about 4 years ago about greatest threats, I'd probably said the major record labels. They, at that particular stage, tended to view digital with the same suspicion that people 100 years ago viewed radio. This is going to cannibalize our sales. And I think there's been a huge, very, very fast change in that. Where once they viewed digital as a threat, now they view it as an opportunity. I think services like Martin's, new digital streaming models, new models of consumption are going to be massively important going forward. Interestingly, I had a meeting with, let's call them an investment company, a couple of weeks ago. And they said, why are people looking for new models in music? Spotify have got it all sewn up. That's it. Streaming, they've done it, job done, move on. And I find that abhorrent. That's like saying, well, Henry Ford's built a car, guys, move on to something else. It was just ridiculous. This was a media specialist, by the way, so that might be one of the threats to the music industry.
Digital media specialist.
Yes, indeed. So maybe that's a threat to innovation. Maybe that goes back to Ben's point about finding investment being a long, hard slog. You have to find the right people, not just the right market timing. So I would say just in terms of opportunities, Simon again mentioned discovery. That's obviously a key topic. There are lots of great companies doing brilliant stuff with regards to discovery. What we tend to find is the way that people discover music is in a number of different ways. You have obviously recommendations, which work very well. The Amazon style, people who bought the swimming pool also bought Bob Marley's Legend. That sort of stuff has its place. It's very good. We have tastemakers, people like Beyonce tweeting and saying, this is what I'm listening to, this is the band that I like. That's absolutely huge in terms of formulating discovery. Then you also have the sorts of non-linear discovery that you're finding more and more, where you're able to follow your own train of interest through the music, create applications that help you discover in very different ways. Again, the automotive industry, you're driving down the street, you drive past Abbey Road Studios, it starts playing the Beatles, you drive past the Albert Hall, your car starts playing, Mozart or whatever's playing at the Albert Hall. You go to South London, it plays Bowie. You go to Chelsea, it plays Jagger. That sort of thing is absolutely brilliant in terms of new discovery. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but that stuff is only possible through excellent data and knowing your product and being able to exploit it correctly.
I think you made a really interesting point earlier about there's a massive gap. I mean, I had the same experience. I won't mention their name, but a incumbent media company. And I was speaking to their digital department, and it took me about 20 minutes to explain that there's a difference between Spotify and a service like Mixcloud and what those differences are, because they thought they were exactly the same and they were actually competitors. Neither of them see themselves as competitors, but this is the view from a digital division. So there's, on the one hand, there's all the innovation and lots of people coming up with fantastic new services, particularly in London and around the sort of Silicon roundabout area and stuff like that, and all the innovation. But then there's a lot of people who just, and frighteningly in decision-making roles, who just don't get it, who are not.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's competitive or not. I mean, if there's a market out there and you do exactly the same as Spotify, just a penny cheaper, then great, you've got a great business there. You know, more than one company builds cars.
Sorry, I just wanted to say another way of discovering artists is through unsigned artists getting played in shops around the world, and that's quite a new thing that's happening now. And then obviously with Shazam as well, you know, you can find out who the artist is and then go and get their CD. Or whatnot.
I mean, there is some amazing technologies out there. So, Martin, from your perspective, then, what are the main opportunities and threats?
Well, obviously in the panel session, the team put 4G in as a component, and people are asking what's going to happen with better mobile broadband. And obviously there are a number of challenges in that. One is it's got to be affordable for consumers, and at I think £32 a month for EE's entry-level 4G offer, which gives you access to 500 meg. I mean, that's going to make life difficult to use that affordably for streaming. So I think there is, you know, ubiquitous broadband is coming, but it's quite a lot further on mobile. That is a lot further away than we think today, and therefore we've got to think about clever ways to get content into the hands of consumers, which they can use conveniently. And I mean, I think Spotify have shown the way with asynchronous streaming, so that you can download stuff into the Spotify mobile app and then play it offline. I think that's an important way forward for streaming. And then I think the big challenge for everybody sitting here is that the global music industry is going to become a truly global global industry. Mobile access to the internet on mobile is predominant in emerging and developing economies, and those economies are going to be many of the consumers of the future for music, and we've got to make sure that we've got services and content which is suited to their tastes and their behaviour going forward. And I would like to see Psonar in particular, you know, addressing India, Indonesia, and all the other South Latin America. You know, these are going to be big markets in the future, and we've got to make sure we've got good service offerings with great content to service them.
I mean, you touched upon this a little bit earlier, Simon, but is there anything else you want to add in terms of the future?
Well, I think to maybe put Ellie's mind at rest a little bit, I mean, we're paying lots of our artists more for streams already than they are for downloads or they are from CDs. And it's not just catalogue artists, we've got frontline artists, we've got some catalogue artists, and just running their royalty statements at the last 2 quarters, we're just seeing more and more people now earning more money from those services. So, you know, I think it looks fairly rosy.
So it's definitely improved, because there was that quote of Lady Gaga getting paid 100 quid.
That's like 4 years old. It was incorrect,
right.
And Spotify had just started. So, I mean, I think if you look at that, it was right at the time, as long as you understood that was just a publishing revenue and not from like the master side. But it was when Spotify started, or in any service starts, they got to build up their sales team, and at that point they hadn't. They just started.
Do you know what the figures are roughly, like for 1 million streams?
Well, I know what they are for
paid?
us. Yes, I mean I can't say what they are for everyone because I'm not sure that everyone's got the same deal. But I mean it's a pretty straightforward
It's also
service.
It's also true that I think in the last couple of years that now, I mean, lots of people complained about YouTube, but now YouTube is starting to deliver sensible revenues. If you're, I mean, all these situations depend on what deal you've got with them in the first place.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, they are delivering quite sensible revenues now.
But
So I was just going to say, we've only got a couple more minutes. I'll come back to you, but if there are any questions, you can put your hand up. We'll get a mic to you. And also, don't forget, Ellie is actually performing today. If you want to actually hear her music at lunchtime. We'll go straight to questions. So yeah, go ahead.
My name is Jonathan Prove, and I'm with GenieCam. We're a small startup. My question to the panel is, I'd like to really get your thoughts on, as of late, the whole Bruce Willis debacle at iTunes. His argument that he's spent, millions of dollars on his music collection. He wants to pass it on to his children. Obviously, there's licensing issues that iTunes is coming up with, and they're arguing, no, you can't do that. Now, had I known that when I started using iTunes and downloading, yes, the convenience is great, but I think I probably would have gone and bought a CD as opposed to downloading the CD if I'd known that, I couldn't pass it on, so to speak. So, reactions?
I think that question is probably best for you, Simon, as the content owner.
I know that buying a CD doesn't give you ownership. I know it's a licensing thing as well, but who's going to stop me from passing that along? So.
No. I mean, I think it's a bit of a non-story. I mean, I think as a sort of a concept for this moment in time, it's an interesting point to discuss. But if the world is moving towards access and streaming services, but you've got access to everything anyway, why would you want to pass it on? Because whoever's got the service, whoever pays for it, has got access to everything. So that story kind of goes away at that point. I mean, and practically, if you've got a hard drive and it's full of music from iTunes, plug it into someone else's computer. They've got it. I mean, okay, so there's a legal point about passing it on. Get on with it.
Yeah, but
There
the
you
thing
go.
is, how do you know you're always going to have access to the particular piece of music that you want? I mean, you know, you're trusting the corporation to put up the music that you want and not take it away. You know, not for the cost to change. There's lots of things. You know, the terms can change.
Certainly could do. You could lose your CD as well. You know, it could break, could scratch it. I mean, there's
Yeah, but
all
you
sorts
can
of
back it
things
up.
that could happen. But you know, I think we need to be in the practical world. And you know what? Services like Spotify may lose some licenses at some point in time, and music will disappear. You know, it's possible. Sure.
Well, yeah, a lot of things have, come on and off there. But I think that, the thing is, and Simon said earlier about, when people are starting, it's probably the first time someone raised that issue, and somebody who hadn't really thought it through probably just said, oh, yes, no, that, But I think, these are just the kinds of issues that come up when people are sort of new to thinking about that kind of thing. And I think, probably someone in commercial and legal thought, oh, well, yes, this is a great way for us to, but practically, as Simon said, it's just not going to happen that way, is it? I mean, if you've got a login, or you've put it on your hard drive, he's going to come round and sort of take that off.
It's a bit like, and I'll probably show my age, it's a bit like the age of the demo or promotional release, which you're not allowed to sell, which obviously everyone did. So, yeah, another question.
Yeah, hi. Tekin Suleiman from Proud FM here. I wonder if the panel can talk a little bit about how technology and the internet has changed the importance of the live music experience and how artists and labels and such connect with fans using technology and the internet.
I personally have seen that live's actually become really important because there's such, it's sort of like having something in front of you and sort of being able to connect with it is something that you really like. It's almost like it drives that obsession. People want to go to the next level with it. So I think, videos online are really good, but there's nothing that can take away what it is like to be there in person. I think it's very hard, just in the same way that now anyone can put their music up online. There's tons and tons and tons of bands, especially unsigned bands as well, gigging and touring, and there's kind of fewer venues, well, maybe until recently, with the new Live Music Act, but, again, there's a few maybe hitches with that one, but, there's so many artists trying to get into these venues, and, venues are really, well, we work with a lot of them who are finding it frustrating, and, who to book and who not to book, because, you get all these different submissions now, and people can inflate their numbers about how many views on YouTube they've had, which doesn't necessarily reflect on people they get through the door. But I think in general, live is a pretty healthy market, and I think that, it's about promoters really understanding which bands have actually got the pull, which bands have really picked up a strong fan base and will bring people through the door.
I think we could probably have a whole panel on that subject, but one of the interesting things about technology and events is, and from my background in terms of running events, is it's now enabled people to put on their own events because they can communicate directly with their fan base. There are lots and lots and lots of remote ticketing services, so you can set up your own. You don't need to have any relationship with Ticketmaster. You can do your own ticketing. You can find out where your fans are and therefore put on events where they are, as opposed to back in the old days of running events. It's like a blind stab. You put on an event somewhere and hope people turn up. So I think it's enabled a lot more. I mean, Ellie might want to talk about this because Ellie runs a lot of her own gigs. So
Yeah, no, I was just going to say there's another perspective on it. Is that I performed for 3 nights a couple of weeks ago at Best of Britannia as a hologram, as a Musian holograms signed up, which is quite an interesting way that could go forward. You can have simultaneous gigs around the world, and obviously you don't have to be there, which is really great. So, yeah, I mean, other than that, yeah, it's quite difficult without a booking agent to obviously get big tours and everything like that. So, yeah, I don't know really.
you've got your own residencies, haven't you, that you've set up?
Yeah, 3 nights a week playing at the Grand Union pubs, which is a great income. But it's been I've only been doing that for the last 4 months. Other than that, we've been playing free shows. Now I've sort of drawn the line, so we're not going to play any more free shows. And muddy festivals as well. That's it. After Secret Garden Party, it was giving that one up.
I think we've got time for maybe one more question, and then we'll have to brought to a close.
Questions for Simon. You have a film and television group now. I was wondering, is that because you want to be a bigger entertainment company, or is that something that's going to help the music side of things in terms of licensing and distributing the music and getting it heard to more people?
I'm not sure I'm following you.
Well, you have a film and television aspect to your business.
Well, we've got licensing. part
It's
of our
just a
business.
licensing thing?
Yeah, no, we just
I
license.
thought it was going to be a production entity, that's why.
Oh, God, no. No.
Yeah, I found it a distraction as well. I thought to myself, if there's...
No, I mean, we want to stay, I mean, we've always been quite clear, we want to stay as a record company. It's a really old-fashioned idea. We don't want to do live, you know, we don't want to do anything else. We want to be a record company, you know, master rights, and we're not really interested about getting into any other business,
Good.
which is a really kind of crazy old-fashioned thing to do, but you know what? It kind of works
That's
for us.
why, yeah, my first impression was that it would be a distraction if you went to the production side of things, so I was just wondering. if
No, I
that was
mean,
the case.
you know, one of the hardest things for our business, certainly the way that the music business has changed over the last 15 years, is staying focused on what we're good at and what our strengths are. And I think when there's a lot of competition to sign the best artists, and our pitch is, we just like to sign your master rights and get that to the widest amount of people, as opposed to, can I have a share of your live income? Can I have a share of your T-shirts? Can I have a share of your publishing? Can I have a share of your whatever it is that you're wearing today? So, I mean, that's our strategy. Just keep it really pure, really simple. We're involved in lots of other stuff, but our business is being a record company, and we're very, very focused on that.
Okay, I think that's it. We're out of time. Please join me in thanking the panellists for giving them the time today. And hand back to Lisa.